USCHO.com. This is the USCHO Weekend Review podcast from U.S. College Hockey Online at USCHO.com. A look at this weekend in college hockey and a review of the top news of the week.
Welcome to USCHO Weekend Review, being recorded on October 28th, 2019. I'm Ed Trefzger, along with Jim Connelly. Well, Jim, our game of the week this week was Northeastern and St. Cloud, a split on the weekend, and finally a chance for St. Cloud to get in the W column and bounce back after a convincing win by Northeastern on Friday.
Yeah, and I thought that was actually a really good bounce back win on Saturday, and they limited Northeastern to only 18 shots on goal. Showed a little bit of character too after the way things went on Friday, kind of a lopsided loss. They fall behind yet again in the first period. Not giving up a ton of shots in the opening frame, and you come out into intermission, you're down 1-0. But a couple of goals, Paling and Henches score in the second period, and then those are some of your leaders, and that just shows that you've got some of that character, that leadership characteristic that you really need. So I think that Saturday win really probably is one that St. Cloud can look at. You've got a couple of ties going into the weekend. You might feel good, you might not feel good going in, then you get thumped on Friday. If they had lost that Saturday game, I think that there would have been a lot of mental evaluation. You'd maybe be doubting yourselves, and I think because you win that game, that could turn things around here early.
Also, continuing its winning ways, a trip down south, Minnesota State at Alabama Huntsville. It's a nice place to go for a trip, and Minnesota State continues its winning ways.
Yeah, and talk about pounding. I believe they put 88 shots on goal over 2 nights, scoring 9 times. So that's a pretty impressive stat from the weekend. And I like the way that they're rolling right now. They're playing very good hockey, and I don't think that this changes anything in the poll. Obviously Denver was idle this week. They're the number 1 team in the country. They deserve to stay the number 1 team in the country. But Minnesota State, they held serve. They took care of business. They won games that they were supposed to win, and that's always a big positive.
Notre Dame swept Lake Superior State over the weekend. It was notable because it was the old coaching home of Notre Dame head coach Jeff Jackson, although he left the Lakers 23 years ago. Still, for longtime hockey fans, that's notable, but things continue to go in the right direction for the Fighting Irish.
Yeah, and I'm not sure that the ties to Lake State matter to Jeff anymore. I think to fans, they definitely matter. I mean, he was the man that turned around that program and kind of built it into something in the later 80s, early 90s. It took a couple of big steps backwards, but in the last few years, actually, I think Lake Superior State has been an excellent team, and they gave, I thought at times this weekend, they gave a pretty good challenge to what I believe is going to be a very good Notre Dame team. So entertaining hockey, this game on Saturday, televised, able to be watched if you had some of the feeds to some of the regional sports networks, and got to see a little bit of that game. And I like Notre Dame. They can move. That team gets up and down the ice. I've always thought of Jeff Jackson's team as having some decent speed. And this is definitely a characteristic that will be a part of what they do. They move the puck really well, and they skate really well. So I'm going to be keeping my eye on Notre Dame. I know that they didn't get the early season votes in the poll to be a top 3 team, but this is a team that's probably knocking on the door of being top 3 here in the coming weeks.
Minnesota Duluth has had a rough road up until this past weekend, but they got a sweep home and home with then number 20 Minnesota.
Yeah, and maybe it just takes some real hometown rivalry for them. I know that they've been playing decent hockey. I saw them their opening weekend when they split with UMass Lowell. I do believe that they've got the talent there to be a very good team. I think that they had 23 shots on goal on Saturday night, but somebody that had watched that game said that they were all grade A's. It seemed that they were getting really high quality scoring opportunities. So earning that 2-game home and home series sweep, I think, is big. That's a confidence builder for them. It's also a little bit of payback. Last year, early in the season, again, they were the defending national champions, and it was a tie, I believe, in Duluth on opening night, banner raising night. Then they headed out to the Twin Cities and lost the next day. So last season, a tie and a loss. This season, 2 wins. That'll be a good confidence booster, I think. Especially, I think people understand this Minnesota team is maybe even a little bit better than last year's team. So Duluth knows that they just took 4 points off a pretty good opponent.
Well, a couple of those Minnesota schools, St. Cloud State and Minnesota Duluth, off to slow starts, 3-3 for Duluth, 1-1-2 for St. Cloud. But I would not be surprised to see both of them go a couple of rounds or more in the NCAA tournament, maybe even Frozen Four berth for one or both.
Yeah, you can't sleep on those teams. It's that simple. In Duluth, we've said it now, they kind of get billed for playoffs, and the start of their season is never usually as big of a concern as how they finish, and they usually finish so strong. And then obviously, 8-0 in the tournament in the last 2 years. They know how to win NCAA tournament games. So I agree with you. I think that both of these teams are really good. Don't sleep on either. These are teams that, as the season goes on, I think they'll have some really big wins. Both of them big, resume building wins on their schedules.
Well, we've got more of Weekend Review to come in just a moment.
This is the USCHO Weekend Review podcast from US College Hockey Online.
This is Weekend Review from USCHO.com for October 28th, 2019. Jim, UMass Lowell got 3 out of 4 points in Hockey East over the weekend with a win over Providence Saturday and a tie that they had to come back to achieve against BU on Friday.
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty good victories, a tie and a win, I guess, for Lowell. The tie on Friday was a good character builder. They were down 3-0 kind of early in that game. They gave up a first period goal, then a really bad giveaway in the second period that led to 2-0, a shorthanded goal for BU, and then a power play, not too much later, it was 3-0. And they're sitting there, they're coming off a weekend against Colgate where they got just a single point, and you can start shaking your head. But instead of doing that, they battled back and they cut it to 3-2 before the end of the second, and then early in the third tied it. Never got the winner. They had a breakaway, Carl Berglund in overtime to seal the deal. A great stop by BU's goaltender, and that gave the 1 point out of it. I think they were pretty happy with that point when you think about where they were. But then the next night, they battled a Providence team that they have just not had success against. It's been quite some time since they had a win against Providence. I believe it was the 2016 Hockey East tournament, the semifinals. They won a triple overtime game against Providence. So it had been quite some time. And on the road, that's a building that has not been friendly to Lowell. And they gutted one out. They got the game to overtime. And then I mentioned Berglund not scoring on Friday. Saturday, he made it count. It was a rebound shot, and he buried it into a pretty wide open net. For Lowell, you're looking bounce of the puck either way. You could have lost both of those games. Instead, they come away with 3 out of 4 points, and I have to feel good about themselves. They'll go on to a stretch here where they'll play some of the teams that at least preseason were ranked lower, and those are the series that you hope to take as many points as possible. They've had a somewhat difficult schedule to start, with Minnesota Duluth and then BU and Providence. So it'll be interesting to see what they can do against these teams that, conceivably you're supposed to win against.
Well, things are going very well for Grant Patolni's Northern Michigan Wildcats. 5-game unbeaten streak, a win and a tie last weekend against BU, and a weekend sweep and 6 WCHA points against Ferris State on the road.
Yeah, I mean, this is a team that I guess I didn't know exactly what to expect from them. And they were down. You want to talk about being down. They were down 4-1 2 Fridays ago against BU, came back, tied that game. And, talking to people about it, they were grossly outplayed in that game, but still found a way to get a point out of it. And then they find a way to win the next night. Then this weekend they come out a 4-3 win, a 6-4 win. All four of those games on the road, they took basically 3 wins and a tie on the road. They had split with Michigan State to open things, so they're doing very well. They're going to get Alabama Huntsville at home this weekend. I think the first true test will figure out exactly where this team is November 8th and 9th when they will host St. Cloud State. That should be one of those series that gives Northern everything that they'll know about themselves. By the time that weekend's over, they should know exactly where they stand.
There's a video on YouTube from a game at Penn State a couple of years ago where Air Force coach Frank Serratori talking about his goaltender and says, they call the game hockey, but sometimes I think they ought to call it goalie. Well, he saw that happen against him this weekend, actually Thursday and Friday, as RIT was at Air Force. Air Force put up 44 shots on Thursday and 36 shots on Friday. Air Force got 1 goal out of the weekend, a 2-1 loss on Thursday, and a 1-0 shutout on Friday. Second shutout of the season for RIT goaltender Logan Drackett. He's given up 7 goals in RIT's 6 games. Best October ever for RIT at Division I at 5-1. So he has a 1.17 goals against and a .966 save percentage through October.
Wow. I guess that's all you can say about that when you see a goalie stopping 79 out of 80 shots on a weekend. And, obviously if your team comes out of that, then with the wins, which they always should, that's a good thing. But, it wasn't exactly like they blew Air Force out of the barn on either night. So I think RIT probably wants to see some more production out of their offense, especially given this past weekend. But they know what they have in goal. Logan Drackett's been pretty solid since he stepped foot on that campus. So I'm pretty high on this RIT team. I think they have a lot of potential in Atlantic hockey. I don't think that they got the early season respect maybe in the coaches poll for how good they are. But this is a team that's going to compete. They'll be right up there with AIC and any other teams that want to make a run. I think that this is a good enough team, and they might not have offensively proved it this weekend, but certainly in goal they proved what their worth is.
Well, it's the 10th anniversary of that school going to the Frozen Four, and they wrote a hot goalie that year. They'd love to see history repeat itself, especially since the Frozen Four is back in Detroit as it was in 2010.
Could you imagine that? It's almost like that they would vote to have the Frozen Four in Detroit every year if they were to make it there yet again. That was a great moment for college hockey when you think about what an upset was to get the first and still the only Atlantic hockey team into the Frozen Four.
Well, it's about time for the Ivy League schools to get underway with real hockey. They only get to play a 29-game season instead of 34. Jim, I think it might be time, I don't know if it'll ever happen, but it might be time for the Ivies to be allowed to play a regular 34-game schedule. I mean, you see Harvard and Cornell in the poll with 0-0-0 records. They're going to get underway, but shouldn't there be an exception there? I know that the idea was, well, let's be able to have our schools our students be able to play in each season, each sports season, fall, winter, and spring. Hockey covers half a fall and half a spring. So I don't know how you get around it. Shouldn't the Ivies play the full schedule and just get it over with?
Yeah, I mean, if that's the mentality of why, then yeah. I mean, we don't have Division I athletes playing in multiple sports anymore. That's something from the 60s. The reality is you're going to specialize once you get to college, and if you're a college hockey player, despite the fact they're only playing 29 games, these players are still probably playing a similar schedule in terms of when they got to campus in the summertime, how much they practiced, without their coaches in the summertime. Once they got on the ice, everything feels the same as any other Division I school. So I'd like to see it. I just don't see it happening. The Ivy League leadership is just a little archaic. And listen, I also understand that this is not all about just how many sports you can play. There's an academic component to this as well, and that's another big part of it. So I haven't seen any real give in any other sports real talks, legitimate conversations. I'm not hearing a ton around college hockey. I'd rather them play 34 games. I think coaches probably, in terms of making them a little bit more competitive, would rather make them play 34 games. It leaves you a little bit more room for error, because you have a few more non-league games. I mean, right now their non-league schedule is so it's brutal how few games you play, and if you lose some of those games, you're just killing your NCAA tournament hopes.
Let's take Harvard. Harvard gets 29 games, 22 games in ECAC, 2 games in the Beanpot. They're left with 5 non-conference games.
Right. So, and if you're not solid in those games, those 7 non-conference games, if you go 1-6 out of conference, then you have to be almost perfect in the ECAC, and that's we've always known that's a league where there's more splits in a weekend than there are sweeps. So, I think it's a tougher road for Ivies to hoe sometimes. Some people would say it's even because you always play the schedule that's in front of you, but I think that it would be more beneficial to these schools if they played the full 34 game slate.
Well, that's going to do it for Weekend Review from USCHO.com. We also have USCHO Spotlight during the week, focusing on a single coach or team, and USCHO Game of the Week towards the end of the week, previewing the weekend. For Jim Connelly, I'm Ed Trefzger, and we'll catch you next time.
This has been the USCHO Weekend Review Podcast, a production of U.S. College Hockey Online. Visit uscho.com/podcasts to listen or subscribe.